Well, Joel Klatt, he's the voice of college football here, and we have a crazy weekend. Indiana Notre Dame starts on Friday. Marcus Freeman just signed an extension, which doesn't surprise me because he's really good. There was rumors about the Bears job. I want to go to Texas, though. So the last 3 weeks I've watched them, and I'd make an argument Arch Manning is a better fit at quarterback. I don't like going into a playoff and not loving your quarterback. It feels like they've gotten conservative to me. When I watch them and I see all that five-star talent, I see it on defense. I don't see it on offense. Is there any chance if Texas struggled in the first half and Clemson's got a real defense, they just go with Arch and they just say, it's been bad for a month? I mean, do you think Sark would do that?
He did it against Georgia in that first matchup, right, Colin? So like I think that there are certainly elements of Texas's offense that I believe in more if Arch is on the field. He's much more mobile than Quinn Ewers is.
Yeah, that's easy.
And right now, he changes the pace of his throws to a different degree. One of the things, and I know this is a small thing, but with Ewers in there, they have certainly regressed offensively. In fact, 4 of their last 7 games, they've scored 20 points or less.
Yeah.
And that's not what you would expect from a Steve Sarkisian offense. And one of the things that has happened is that as Ewers became more immobile with that banged up ankle, then the level of stress on just the passing game and his ability to throw guys open went way up. And he doesn't really do that. He doesn't change the pace on his throws all that much. He's a float thrower. He throws with touch almost all the time. He doesn't necessarily drive into tight windows and really throw guys open. So because of that, there's a ton of stress on Steve Sarkisian to scheme guys open for him. Yeah. And when he faces good defenses, that's tough. So I do think that there's a little bit of an element. Remember the Tua Jalen Hurts Alabama team? Yeah. Remember Nick Saban? He was toying around with, hey, are we going to be better with Tua to throw the football rather than Jalen in there? And then when he had to have it against Georgia in the national championship game, he pulled the trigger. I just wondered to myself, like, if they were struggling, how short is that leash on Quinn Ewers? I think it would be pretty short.
Okay, so Urban Meyer came on yesterday, and he said basically Ohio State's going to have to throw. Their offensive line's not going to create openings against the SEC D line. It's not. And all of a sudden, I look at the weather. It's 13 degrees. They lost confidence of Will Howard in the game against Michigan. I think Tennessee's got a better defense than Michigan, but they both have great D lines. I don't know. J-Mac thinks that they're going to roll. I think this puppy's got 23-20 written all over it. I mean, what do you think it's going to look like? What's this game going to look like, Buckeyes-Vols?
So history would suggest that when Ryan Day has a poor showing, that he fixes it pretty quickly. And I go back to this, like in 2019, remember they lost to Clemson in that game against Trevor Lawrence. And then the next year, he got another shot at Clemson. They dropped, 49 on them in that game in 2020 in the playoff with Justin Field. They lose to Michigan. They go to the Rose Bowl, face Utah. They drop 48 on Utah. That was 2021. In 2022, they lose to Michigan, still get into the playoff. They go face Georgia. They put 41 on that Georgia team, albeit in a loss. And so, like, to me, when Ryan gets put into a corner and his offenses get put into a corner and they don't play as well as they should, he's got a little bit of a time to evaluate that. He usually comes out swinging. And there is no doubt they have been, even self-admittedly, their game plan against Michigan was totally wrong. Chip Kelly talked about it. So I fully expect Ohio State to come out and play a game in space in the passing game and try to utilize their weapons. I really do. I don't know if they have to throw the ball down the field as much as they need to play the game in space. If they do that, they're going to score some points. There's no doubt, because they're too talented not to. The game plan against Michigan was wildly conservative. I think that game and opponent is more inside of their heads than anything else. So I'm actually going to go opposite of you. I think Ohio State comes out and plays really well offensively, loose offensively, and aggressive offensively. And I think that they're going to score quite a few points because of it.
So is Indiana a fraud, like against Ohio State, and beat up on the Rutgers of the world, or can they play with Notre Dame?
Well, I mean, look at it this way. Notre Dame and Indiana are actually fairly similar. in that they both played very weak schedules and they beat up on those weak schedules. Now, it just so happened that Indiana played one great team. They lost to that one great team on the road. Notre Dame lost in Northern Illinois at home. And so I think when you look at this game, I think Indiana's got a great shot. Of all the games, this is the one that we could see an upset. I actually think I even picked an upset. I think Indiana could absolutely win this game. And the one reason is because they're strong right where you have to be strong in order to beat Notre Dame. And that's specifically the run defense. Their run defense is very unique. First of all, from a schematic standpoint, they don't just force their defensive linemen to take one gap and stay in that area. They let them kind of play, and then the linebackers fit opposite. And it's because they have all these guys from JMU that played for their coordinator at JMU. They know this defense. It's a unique style of defense, and they're the number one rushing defense in the country. Well, if you can force the game onto the shoulder of Riley Leonard and the passing game, then I like your chances if you're Indiana. Because here's the thing. Curtis Rourke is a better quarterback than Riley Leonard. If you get into a situation where you just have to trust the quarterbacks and the offenses, I would trust Indiana specifically because of that issue with the run defense against Notre Dame's run offense. The one thing that I will say, though, is that I don't think Indiana has seen a run game like Notre Dame's at all. So it won't surprise me at all if they struggle actually stopping the run. But this is the one game that I would say that the underdog has a good chance to win.
Okay, two things here we have to address. Everybody now is selling their stock on Lincoln Riley. And I said this, because it's a high-profile program, people go, oh, they lost all these 5-star guys. None of them were as good as people thought. Actually, their best receivers.
Oh, I totally disagree. Zachariah Branch was
he's fast.
An electric player.
Fast.
Electric player.
Electric. And my take is, then why couldn't they get him the ball? I mean, it was Lemon was the better receiver.
Oh, you have to ask your coach about that, Colin.
Do you think they're?
Is that
do you
the
think
coach's responsibility?
Well, I mean, if I think he's I think he's a classic, great YouTube highlighter, and you get him in the program, and it's like he's a return man. I don't know. I mean, I watch their other 4-star guys, and they're all lighting it up, and I'm like, the 5-star guy's not that good. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, when you lose Deuce and you lose Kyron Hudson, like they've got a major problem. You can explain it away all you want. No. They've got a major problem on their hands. The fact is that if you were to sit here 3 and 4 years ago, 5 years ago, before NIL really became a thing, and you were to say like, hey, at some point in college football's future, you're going to have unlimited free agency, unlimited NIL, and so players can choose where to go. They can choose what brands they want to play for and what markets they want to play in them. You would have thought to yourself, oh my gosh, that is heaven for USC. And here we are, and USC right now is spiraling. And that is a dangerous place to be, because when you lose momentum, it's almost impossible to get it back. One of the few examples that I've ever seen in college football history where a coach and a program lost total momentum and got it back to the point where they could go win a national championship was Michigan just a couple of years ago. In the COVID year, they wanted to fire Jim Harbaugh, and all of a sudden it was this miraculous turnaround into the point where they ended up winning a national championship. Can it happen? Yes, but I got to tell you, like, I'm worried for USC right now.
Well, I've always been a little more optimistic. Very optimistic personality.
Well, but here's the problem. Their roster is going to be less talented next year than it was this year. And Colin, they lost to Maryland and to Minnesota.
That's true.
So if you're telling me their roster is going to be worse from a talent perspective, how can you expect their team to be better from a record perspective?
Well, I don't think the guys they're losing are as good as you think. That star system. I don't know. I'm not big into that. I'm into get
that is a wild take of yours. I got to tell you, man. That is okay. That is some optimism right there. You are an optimist.
I really am. So Urban Meyer said yesterday, 10 years ago, Belichick would have struggled in college. But now It's all negotiating. You don't have to go knock on doors.
That's right.
It's just all negotiating. He'll do fine. What do you make of Belichick at Carolina?
I totally agree with Urban Meyer. You know, it used to be that in college football, it was about relationships and development in a lot of senses. And you had to sell the ability of that player to go to your place and win championships and then go to the National Football League. That's what recruiting was. It was relationships, NFL, national championships. And it was so few programs that could dominate those arenas. Okay. And could really convince guys that, like, you have to come here if you want to win a national championship. You have to come here. Look at our lineage of players in the National Football League. Okay. And now it's different. It's very different. Now you've got to evaluate talent, and you've got to do it well because of the transfer portal and recruiting. Well, I would argue that Bill Belichick knows what he's doing as far as evaluating talent. Then you've got to value that talent. And that's what the difference is now as opposed to in the past, is that you've got to value that with the rev share and understand what you're going to pay these guys. And you can't overpay for guys that are not going to contribute. You just can't. And so I think his background is going to pay huge dividends in terms of that. I also believe that the top of college football is flatter than it's ever been as far as parity is going. And so in-game situational coaching is becoming much more important than it was 4 and 5 years ago. That's going to be a big feather in Bill Belichick's hat. And the last thing that I would say is that right now, there are so many different paths to success in college football as opposed to 7 years ago. In the height of the 14 playoff, Colin, you had to beat Georgia or Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson because those are the only teams that could dominate those areas that I was talking about previous. Now, look at these. 4 of the 12 teams in the college football playoff are Indiana, with a first-year head coach and transfers from JMU. Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State was picked to finish 16th in the Big 12. You've got SMU, which is paying to be in the ACC and not collecting a rev share. Rhett Lashley brings in all these guys from his time at Miami. And you've got Boise State. So the number of ways to get to the top end of college football and define yourself as successful is there's just more paths to that now. And so I fully expect Bill Belichick to work out at North Carolina.
Okay, I think we're going to get close games. J-Mac says blowouts. You think Notre Dame, Indiana's close, but potential blowout. So I can't wait. I'm very excited. I am. I've got
a close game in Texas Clemson.
Oh, you do?
I think if I was a betting man, I would take the points with Clemson because I don't think Texas is going to be able to score 30 or more. And then I'm just like, the one game I think could get away from somebody would be Penn State, SMU. SMU, the 2 best teams they faced all year, they lost. Meanwhile, Penn State is like knocking on the door of that elite status in our sport.
All right. Good seeing you, Klatt. Joel Klatt.
It's great to see you. Great to see you. I need some of that optimism rubbing off. You got some sort of like holiday cheer going on.
J-Mac's been saying it all day. I'm just very grateful. There's just, I got trees all around me and, just very, very grateful.
Look at you.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm grateful that you have me on every week. I really am.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.